Well, it's my joy to introduce Simonetta to you. Simonetta was born in Italy and has lived and worked in different cultures. A former elementary school teacher, she has homeschooled her 8 children for many years. She has written for newspapers, magazines around the world, and has translated the works of several Christian authors into Italian. She is the author of a series called Christian Biographies for Young Readers and several other books, which are offered at the Reformation Heritage Bookstore table. I think that's here inside. Yep. She's also writing for Modern Reformation and the Alliance of Confessing Evangelicals. Recently, she has started a podcast for kids run by kids called Kids Talk Church History. Presently, she lives in San Diego with her husband, Thomas, and her 2 youngest kids. She's a member of Christ United Reformed Church. So please welcome Simonetta.
Good morning. That makes it that whatever she read just makes me sound so amazing. But I am 70 years old, so in 70 years you can do a lot. So anyway, I hope you don't mind my accent. I never lost my Italian accent. I was going to speak about 4 women. I don't know if you saw the program, right? Today I was actually going to speak about Monica of Augustine's mother, and a Chinese woman, Liu Jingwen. I think the maths don't completely match because they put one that I'll be speaking about tomorrow, but they told me not to worry. I was going to switch, but they said no, not to worry. So I'll speak about those 2. I know usually in women's conferences, most of the time, there is a theme or a topic. And when I was approached to speak, I said, well, I can speak about women in church history because I've been writing about church history all the time. And actually, this is one of the books I wrote, Questions Women Asked. So it's about women in church history. So it's a little bit different, and it's not about one topic. Maybe 4 topics, because we're going to do 4 women. But to me, I find it really fascinating to just learn from our sisters who came before us. They always have so much to teach us. So the first one, we're going to talk about Monica. You probably heard about her. Of the 4 that I chose, I'm sure she's the one that you know the most about. Most people hear about Monica, how she prayed for her son, Augustine, and he eventually became a big theologian that we're all learning about. I always thought, when I heard their story initially, I was just always thinking, I can never match up to that. You know, like she prayed and prayed and prayed, and then God answered their prayer. And, you know, God doesn't always answer as quickly as we want to. So I was blaming myself. And it's like, oh, I guess I'm not praying enough. Then she went to see a bishop, and she was crying about her son. And the bishop said, the son of these tears will never be lost. And I thought, oh, now I'm not crying enough. So it's kind of, I like the story, but it didn't completely encourage me until I really read her life. And I said, oh, she was not perfect at all. So I'll tell you a little about her. So she was in Tagaste, which is a city in today would be Algeria, and she was raised a Christian, but her husband was not. She married someone who was not a Christian, And apparently she prayed for him too a lot for many, many years. But he was even abusing her, and we don't, we certainly don't want to condone that. But what Augustine said is that because she was always very meek and kind to him in spite of it all, that's contributed to his conversion. Again, I don't want to say, okay, your husband abused you, just take it. No, but at the same time, those were different times. There was nothing else you could do. So her son, Augustine, he, if you read the Confessions, it's an amazing book. So he was taught the Christian faith, but then he strayed and he went into to a sect called the Manichees, and they believed in good and evil, like two forces, the good and evil fighting each other. And it kind of made more sense to him, because when you think about why is there evil in the world, to him it made more sense to think of good and evil fighting each other rather than thinking that God is over all. I think sometimes we all struggle with that. And also he didn't like, he thought the Manichaeans were a lot more highly educated. They spoke in a way that impressed him. He liked to read Cicero and all these Roman philosophers, and so he was more impressed by them than by his priest and bishop at home. It was just a little place, so didn't speak so fancy. So this is just to give you an idea. So Monica was very concerned about Augustine, and I guess many of us can understand. Some of us maybe have gone through something similar, and if you have young children, well, I hope you don't. But it's a reality that sometimes our kids go astray, and I can understand her pain. But she just kept insisting. She kept going to the bishop and asking him, please talk to my son, please talk to my son. And I can understand that too. and the bishop said no, because he said he will learn, he will understand by himself. If I tell him, he's not going to receive it. And it was maybe a strange answer, but then Augustine later on said he was right. I would not have listened to the bishop, and I had to figure it out. Well, it's hard for a mother to let the son figure things out. So Augustine went to Carthage to learn, to study. Then he came back, and he also had a concubine at that time. Some people don't understand this, but at that time, to have a concubine was considered okay, was not considered. There was a difference between a concubine and a wife, but he was basically faithful to one woman, although they were not married. But Monica didn't like the situation. She was very upset. So I read that once she even threw him out of the house. So this thing can encourage me. She wasn't the perfect mother. And then at one point, Augustine decided to go to Italy to teach, because it was more prestigious teaching in Italy, and probably got more money or better career. And so he told his mother he was going to Italy, and she was not happy again, because now he would go overseas, live North Africa. And so she said, I'm coming with you. He did not want his mother to go with him. So they went to the harbor. They were supposed to get the boat, and then he told his mother, the boat is not going to leave right away. It's going to take some time. Why don't you go? There's a little chapel over there. Go pray, and then I'll call you when the boat leaves. And he left without his mother. So I love Augustine because he tells us all these things. I think you come a little bit further, closer to us, and some autobiographies, even biographies, don't want to say certain things. They're like, everything is good. But he just said things as they were. And so he left. And of course, she went after him. She took the next boat. But it's funny. I mean, to me, it's like the helicopter mother in a way. You're not supposed to, but I understand her completely. I don't know. I think I would have done the same. So anyway, she went to Italy, and then by the time she got there, in those days, it took a while for her to find another boat. By that time he was in Milan. That was the capital of the Roman Empire at that time. So he was working close to the emperor. He had a very prestigious job. And she went there. She was happy that he was working for the emperor's court. But then she did think he should stay with his concubine. She thought he had to get a proper wife and somebody the same status, So again, you see, and these are all things that Augustine is saying. I am not including my own judgment of Monica. These are things he said. He said that she was too concerned about his prestige and his career, because she said he should leave this woman, and he did, and it was so painful because they've been together, I think, 15 years. I lost my page, but I think it was like 15 years. It was a long time. And I can't. And it was extremely painful for him. And then she went back to Africa, and she said, I'm not going to marry again. I'll just stay faithful to you. And then he did not stay faithful to her. And he said that in his confessions, that she was a better person than he was. And they had a child together, and the child was 17 by that time. But he stayed with the father. So he stayed with the father his whole life. So anyway, this is a time when Augustine became a Christian, because he started to attend the church in Milan where Ambrose was the bishop there. And Ambrose, he was a great bishop, a great pastor, but also he spoke the way that Augustine liked. He could speak in a very well taught way, and he appreciated that. So anyway, he became a Christian. You know the story in the garden when he heard the little boy saying "Tolle legge," and he took up the Bible. So that's a famous story. So anyway, then he became baptized and everything, and he started to live in a community with other Christian men, young men, and his mother lived with them. And that part is actually really funny, because it's if you read it, it sounds like they were. You imagine like. Freshmen in a seminary. They're talking about the most minuscule things in theology, And then his mother passes by and she gives an answer just off the top of her head, and everybody goes, wow. And then she complains because one of them sings when he's in the toilet. So it's so funny to read these things because they're so real. And she made a birthday cake for him, and there's actually the ingredients. If you read it, it gives the ingredients for the birthday cake. So it's very fun. And then at the end, she dies. They decide to go back to Africa, and he became a bishop in Africa after that. But she died before they left Italy, and they were near Rome, taking a boat, and she died there. But she said, I am happy, this is what I wanted. I wanted for you to become a Christian, and that's all I wanted, and I'm ready. And so reading Augustine is amazing because he wrote a beautiful thing when his mother died about his feelings. But also it's very encouraging to me that she definitely was not the ideal mother. She made a lot of mistakes along the way, and he pointed out the mistakes. But at the end, he said, she's the reason why I became a Christian. So I think it's still encouraging for us, even if maybe she's not the one that sometimes we put on a pedestal, that praise, and Christ. And she did a lot of other things that were not right along the way. But that, to me, is more encouraging than just reading a perfect life. Okay, so there was one about Monica and the challenge. I kind of divided it into challenges, so that would be the challenge of motherhood. And then the second person that I was going to introduce, it's completely different. We go to China now. This one, it's on your table, and Michelle drew these pictures. Melissa. I get all these names mixed up. Yeah, Melissa drew the pictures. Yeah. So, because this one actually we know what she looks like, and Melissa did a really good job because she lived. She was born in 1909, so she lived far removed from Monica. And I wrote the challenge of service because it was a mixed challenge in her life, challenge of marriage, and then challenge of being arrested in a country where Christianity became illegal. So she had a double challenge. Her name is Liu Jingwen. I hope I'm saying it correctly. So there's no Chinese here too, but I think so. And actually in China, the last name comes first. So Jingwen was her name and Liu her last name. So she was born in 1909. She led a very peaceful life at home. She was a Christian. Her parents were Christian. And when she was 16, she first met a man named Wang Mingdao, and he's actually very famous now in China as a theologian. He was one of the ones who began what in China is called the house movement, like worshiping in homes in protest against the decisions by the Chinese government. Okay, so the Chinese government at that point in time when he was a pastor, decided that they would allow Christianity as long as it was what they defined Christianity. So they actually had some theologians working for the government and leading this church, this government church, and you had to believe what they believed. And he was very much against it, Wang Mingdao, because he said, basically, you're worshiping the government, not Christ. And they kept compromising with everything. Oh, you don't have to believe this, you don't have to believe that. And, they didn't like justification by faith. They said it's by love, as long as you love and you're nice to others and, keep watering everything down. So anyway, he stood firm. Anyway, he was still a young pastor when he went to visit the house where Liu Jingwen lived. And she was only 16 years old. And, he just said, okay, cute little girl, and that's it. But he went back the next year for a conference, and she was playing the piano, and all of a sudden she looked very grown up. And very mature, and he found out that she was actually teaching, and just the way she behaved, she looked very mature, and she started to think she would make a good wife. And she talked to her family, because that's the way they did, and they all talked together, prayed together, and then they decided yes, including Jingwen, of course. And they decided that she could do that, and then she moved into his home, and he was living with his mother and sister. So it was really a trying time for her. First of all, like I was saying, she grew up in a Christian home where everything was very peaceful and nice, and he loved that when he went to see her. But his house was completely the opposite, because his mother was a single mother, a widow, and her husband had died during the Boxer Revolution. So she was a widow, and she had to make do, and she was renting part of the home to people, and these people were not good at all. So there was a lot of yelling and screaming and problems, and she had to fix all these problems. And then what was worse, they actually didn't like Jingwen. I don't know if there was a reason, but they really mistreated her. They kept telling lies about her. So I thought that's so interesting to face a situation like that. And it's like, how do you do that? And I that's one reason why I love to read about church history and the lives of different people, but especially women, because I think women talk more about their problems or maybe I'll just relate more. But anyway, she said that she shed many tears, but then at the same time she realized that God had lessons that he wanted to teach her. And her husband said she met all these trials with a tranquil temperament, and in this way she took the edge off my own suffering. This is amazing. I don't think I could do that. This is one part where I'm very, very admiring this woman, because I don't think I could have done it. And one thing that impressed me is that Mingdao's sister was attacking her a lot, and she said, "We must not blame elder sister. It is not that she clearly knows I have no fault and that she purposely causes me grief. In her eyes, I'm really bad. So it's not surprising that she's dissatisfied with me. If I were in her place, also would be capable of losing my temper. There are few people in the world who would oppress others without any cause whatever. I thought that was amazing. She saw beyond the sister's behavior, and she thought she must have a reason, even if it's not the true reason. I'm not doing anything, but in her mind she has these reasons, and we can't just get over it. So this impressed me very, very much. And so her husband said that we did not blame my sister in the slightest, nor did we blame her. Maybe I made a mistake here. We considered that this was a kind of illness, an illness making people suspicious. It is right to overlook the actions of people who are ill, no matter how they give offense. Okay, on the other hand, he issued a warning. He said, if anyone who reads this is inclined to be suspicious of people, I urge you to turn from it and to take it as a serious illness that can do you much harm into the presence of the Lord and ask Him to heal you. Otherwise, you suffer and you cause others to suffer. So they didn't blame her. They had patience with her, but then he also told people, if that's you, to be suspicious, just try to overcome that. Yeah. So they had one son, only one son, and Mingdao was very thankful that he was not affected by all this. He was too young, so. And then eventually, Mingdao's mother and sister softened their position and they came along. But it took a while. So this was the first of her challenges as a wife. And then the second challenge, I don't think it was as bad. Well, I'm pretty sure it was not as bad. But just to be married to this man that she basically didn't really know, because they met, the family decided it was okay. They got together. They never had time to spend together and know each other. And all of a sudden they realized they were like opposite in everything. And especially his expectations. He was looking for somebody to keep the house clean and be his secretary. And he was very almost OCD about it. He was like, he said he could not take something out without putting it back in, and if the house was dirty, he would have to clean it immediately. And she was more, I'll get to it. I'll clean it eventually. And she was definitely not a good secretary, and she was not trained to do that. Also, she was very forgetful and only concerned about the general effect of her correspondence. So, he was more meticulous. But then on the other hand, he was naturally impulsive and emotional in both actions and judgments. And then she was patient and compassionate and able to resist her impulses, and also to resize his feelings whenever he was impulsive. She was able to calm him down and say, maybe you have to see it this other way. And so finally, he realized that he really needed her for this. She said, far too many wives are well practiced in throwing oil on the flames of her husband's anger, with the result that both get burned. So he really appreciated that whenever he was angry, she could calm him down. There was one thing actually where she did something that I would say probably she should not do. Like she corrected him, and that's understandable when he needed it. But sometimes she did in front of others, and he didn't like it, obviously. But at the end, he actually said, "Oh, it's okay." And he said, that's because we're all creatures of flesh and blood, and there are times when we must allow for faith, he said. To correct someone over hastily can easily inflame his shame and vexation into anger. And when you do this, you're no longer in a position to help him. On the contrary, you may harm him. So, yeah, so he agreed. He said, yeah, that's okay. But then, yeah, he gave that warning that you have to be careful when you do that. But he said, I gradually came to realize that I truly needed someone to correct my faults in that way. And in order to avoid that kind of embarrassment, I had to be more careful in what I said. So basically, they came to a point when he appreciated her, and they were able to work together. So I thought that was very good. That they were so different, and to me, that's not very wise to correct your husband in front of others. But even then, he was able to work around it. For other people, he said, if you rashly imitate my wife, it's like he said, and I think that's a really good warning to anybody. It's like you read any of these stories, they're not supposed to be always models to imitate. They're more like, we look at women in the past and we say, okay, this is what they did, and then we draw our own conclusions and we see how we can apply. It's not, I think many biographies are written in a way that they want you to follow exactly what the people did. But I think it's even better when you can see the virtues and the faults and just learn from these people the way they really were. So anyway, go back to this. If you rashly imitate my wife, you may be attempting more than you have the ability to achieve. You may attempt to make the picture of a tiger and only achieve the likeness of a dog, and give rise to other untoward incidents. When you imitate other people, don't look only at the outside circumstances. Give thought also to inner factors. So, very good lessons. Just reading their life together, their experiences together, I learned a lot. So in the end, he realized that the Lord had made the perfect match. He said, my original idea for a wife was a woman excelling in literary matters. In that way, she could be my secretary. However, my wife is not that kind of person, but she's a fine proofreader both in my work and in my life. She's not what I originally conceived of as the ideal wife, but she's the perfect partner. Now I understand that my original idea was imperfect and my original understanding was faulty. So that's really a good thing. Oh yeah, and then there's one episode that I really like in their lives, because he was always losing his temper. So one time when she forgot to empty a large container before the winter, her husband grabbed an axe, saying that he was going to break. Since that container was going to break anyway, because if you leave it in the winter, it could break. Says, okay, it's going to break. I might as well do it myself. And he took the axe, and she knew that he was being rash. So she prayed silently, Heavenly Father, if you think it doesn't matter that this bat gets broken, let him break it. That way it will not bother me. And right then she heard the axe fall to the ground. I thought it was amazing. I don't think I can do this, but I can try to just give it to the Lord and say, okay, if you allow it, I know it's you, so it will not bother me. Yeah. so they were both amazing. He was amazing in accepting his wife's correction. Not too many husbands can do that. And she was amazing in all this, in being understanding and giving things to the Lord. And they really complemented each other. Later, she had other challenges because, as I was telling you about the situation in China, he was arrested. They arrested both of them. The government arrested both of them and put them both in prison. And he actually, the first time, he recanted because he couldn't take it. He couldn't take basically the mental torture. It was more mental, like they kept interrogating him, and it was just too much. And he said, yes, you're right, or whatever, and he signed the paper. But the paper had a list of offenses that the government said he made, and it wasn't true. And he signed it because he wanted to get out of jail. But once he got out of jail, he couldn't live with himself because he couldn't be a pastor anymore. He didn't think he could do that. And then he met people that were disappointed in him. And so then he was actually arrested a second time because one of the things that he was supposed to do was to not just to recant, to say, yes, I did all this, but also he had to promise that he would join the government church. But he didn't. So they arrested him again, and then the second time he stood firm and he stayed in prison. But she stayed in prison too. Both times she was arrested and was in prison, 2 different prisons. And she went through a lot at that time. But she just continued, both of them continued to be faithful until the end. And he actually refused to come out of jail when at the end they wanted to let him go. And he said, I want you to just clear my reputation, just say that I didn't do any of these things. And it was very, very strong until the end. But yeah, she moved around from prison to prison. She lost her eyesight. She also was mistreated by her inmates. But then even there, her patience made an impression on the other prisoners, and she was able to tell them about Christ. So when they finally came out, they were both old, but he continued to preach. He had to preach. He was preaching at home at that time. He didn't have much strength, and then eventually they both died. He died before her, and yeah. And they're still remembered in China. Here in the States, we don't know very much about them, but in China, they're very famous, and people look up to them as examples of faith. So these are 2 stories for today, and I don't know if you wanted to have questions now, or otherwise I can. One thing I could do is explain about this book, how I wrote.
It's fine right now, and then as well as the book, so that's great.
So
Question and answers is great.
Okay,
Yeah.
we can do a questions and answer. Okay. So, do you have any questions? I don't know if I have the answers, but maybe you'll have the answer. Questions and answers. Yes?
Who has been your favorite person to study, to learn about?
Oh, wow, that's so difficult. It's like, when I wrote this book, how many women are here? I don't even remember how many. 31. I loved all of them so much. And then the good thing about it, I felt like I had 31 friends, new friends, because when you study, I really studied and read what they wrote, what other people wrote, and I get really excited when I do these things. So I get into learning more and more about them. You just find out so much about these women and their lives and their thoughts that really, at the end, I just thought I just had friends. These are all my friends, and I learned so much from them, from each one of them. So it's really hard to say if I have a favorite. I think I like all of them. It's really difficult. I don't think I can choose one. So I told you I didn't have answers. First question, no answer. So what's coming next? Yes.
What was the first one you wrote about, and how did you get started writing?
Yeah. Well, so I never thought I'd be a writer, first of all. I always liked to write, but I never thought I would write books. I would, whatever Michelle read, I wrote for magazines and newspapers, and I liked that, but I never thought of writing a book. And then I started with a series of children's books. And I remember the date because it was 2009 was the anniversary, 500th anniversary of John Calvin. And so in 2008, I had the idea of writing a book for children. And my idea was that there are so many books out there, biographies for children, and they're all good. But I didn't see anything that really explained why these people, some people, were really important in church history. So I was thinking, there's a lot of biographies about good Christians, but, my pastor is a good Christian, and I can find so many good Christians. And those are all encouraging, but I was thinking there are books about artists and scientists and politicians, and they are a lot deeper, and they tell us why these people are important. And I thought, why don't we do that for theologians? And then John Calvin was coming up, so I said, okay. But it took a while. I didn't think I could do it. I asked other people to do it. I had the idea, but I went to other people, can you write this book? And then nobody did. So then I finally somebody said, why don't you do it? And I was homeschooling at that time, so I did the first book with my kids. We practically just wrote it together and even drew some fun pictures together. But I didn't even think anybody would say yes. And I sent it to a lot of people, to a lot of publishers, and then whenever they said no, I would just put a smiley face on the paper because I wasn't too concerned. But it took a while. I mean, it's a long story how it finally got published by Reformation Heritage. They're upstairs selling the books right now. So the first one, was John Calvin, and there's a lot more. In case you have John Calvin, there's a copy there, and you wonder why John Calvin, the pictures are black and white and the rest are all in color. It's because when I first approached all these publishers, one publisher initially seemed a little interested, said, well, we want to see a formal proposal. I had to go to the library and get a book, How to Write a Proposal. And we want to see a chapter. The more they kept saying it, the more I was doing. And then at the end I said, well, I have all this. So. But they said, a book like this will never come out in color. Nobody will ever publish it in color. So the pictures, if you have pictures, they have to be black and white. So I asked a friend, and he did the pictures in black and white. And then when I gave them to RHB, they said, "Oh, but we would like in color." But it was too late. So yeah, for the next one, we did in color. So I don't know if I answered your question or was sidetracked, but yeah.
Was Calvin the first one that you wrote?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that was for children. And actually, I have been trying to write part 2 of this book because I have so many other women. I found so many others. This is called Questions Women Asked because I saw so many books about women in the past, and then I said, how can I make it a little different? And also how to organize it. Like, I know there's book Reformation women, Puritan women, but this is like from the 3rd century to the 21st almost. I said, how? And then I thought the questions, like, because I saw so many of them had very interesting questions. So I brought questions that they asked and ways how they answered these questions. So I wanted to do it part 2, and RHB said no, because this book didn't sell good enough. So they said you have to, if we do another one, we cannot call it Question Women Ask Part 2 or anything like that. And so we came up with something challenges women faced. So I don't know if they're going to say yes. So the RHB is up there selling. So if you see the CEO is standing there, his name is David. You tell him you want the part 2. Okay. Anything else? Any other question? Yes?
In studying women, what are some of the common struggles they have, and then you were able to understand how they actually help?
Yes. In this book, I found questions that went from the most mundane to the most theological. You have, where is it? Macrina. How should a Christian live in this world and have hope for the next? And she gets into the whole thing about what happens when you die, and how can your body, your soul continue? No, how can your body be reconstructed, one day? So she gets into all this stuff. And there's one, where is she? Elizabeth of the Palatinate. She actually argued with Descartes, the philosopher Descartes, but very nicely. She, like always, I'm just a woman, and I don't know very much, but to me, it sounds like maybe you're wrong. And it's very funny, but she was amazing. I don't think not right now I'm speaking like this. I think she was serious though. And so you have those very heavy questions. And then I have a question, where is it? Does God care about hairstyles? I actually wanted to call this questions. I wanted to call it, does God care about hairstyles and other questions women asked? But the publisher said, no, because maybe they're going to think all the questions are about hairstyles and such. But this woman, she was in the 16th century, one of the many, many amazing women in France during at the time when and there was a big massacre, Bartholomew Day massacre. So she was an amazing woman. There's so much more to say about her, but I chose this question because to me it was interesting, because she almost got excommunicated for her hairstyle. And she fought against it, and she quoted Calvin, and then she was upset because her husband was not there. He was gone, and it's like, you don't excommunicate me without my husband here. But yeah, because she was wearing her hair all fancy. She was from a noble family, and they were going by the Bible verse. You don't braid your hair, but I thought it was very interesting how she responded. She quoted the Bible. She quoted Calvin. she had all her reasoning. So anyway, yeah, that's all kinds of questions. Yeah, and that's why I find it so interesting. Yeah. Any more? No? That's okay. Oh, yeah?
Nancy, translate please. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Translate. Name?
yes.
Okay. ¿Puedo preguntar si el libro fue escrito en español?
Oh, she's wanting to know if the book has been translated into Spanish.
This book, no. Some of the children's books, yes. This one, no. Again, go upstairs. Yeah. Go upstairs, find David. Tell him you want it in Spanish. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.